a masked gunman killed a woman in the parking lot of a Tennessee church on Sunday morning and wounded 6 worshippers inside the building before shooting himself in a scuffle with an usher who rushed to stop the attack.
But the shooter, identified as Emmanuel Kidega Samson, 25, walked into Nashville's Burnett Chapel Church of Christ wearing a ski mask and opened fire. Police say an usher who struggled with the suspect was struck in the head with the gunman's weapon before the suspect fired and wounded himself in the chest.
Now, according to a police statement, Samson was armed with 2 pistols and had another handgun and a rifle in his sport utility vehicle. Now, about 50 people were worshipping at the church when the gunman entered the premises. Of course, well, we have a guest who is joining us on the line as soon as we can get details of him. He's actually in Abuja. He's joining us via Skype from Abuja. Uche Igwe, good morning and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, good morning.
Yes,
how are you doing today?
Yeah, do you think there's a link between this shooting by this Sudanese immigrant and U.S. government's announcement recently that it will only extend temporary protective status, that's TPS, for Sudan up until 2018 as against South Sudan's 2019?
Well, I think that is pretty much too early to conclude, but it looks like the immigration laws and the tightening of immigration laws under the Trump administration is leaving a whole lot of immigrants frustrated and disgruntled. So I really cannot say at the moment whether this is the reason for this very unfortunate shooting. All I can say at this point is that my heart goes to the family of those who lost their loved ones, including the church and the minister who, who at that time was ministering before this happened. This is a very unfortunate thing. For me, beyond the immigration issues, it calls again onto the table the issue of gun culture, in the United States. And, regardless of what might have provoked this young man, the fact that he has access to a gun or guns, and many young people in the United States have access to guns, makes it easy for them to, always decide to choose the nearest target whenever they get frustrated. So I think that it is important to, again, bring the issue of gun culture and gun regulation back onto the table if the United States will be a safe society in the future and now.
But you think the Republican government will even want to look into that, knowing that Republicans most usually are always in support of guns, private people owning guns anyway?
Yeah, I don't think so. And I don't think so. But that does not, again, that will not stop us from continuing to raise the issue. Of course, the Republicans will not and will never, look in that direction. But this is America, and the Republicans will come and go. And as soon as pressure continues to build, as soon as this kind of avoidable losses continue, I think that it is important to bring it back onto the table as an issue of important debate.
Of course, reports say that the gunman had attended church there about a year or 2 before, but had only stopped for a while. Obviously, he had a lot up his sleeves. Now, back to the issue of gun ownership in the U.S. The NRA, the National Rifle Association, is the last thing they want to hear when you talk about restricting gun ownership in the United States. Of course, President Obama, former president, did so much, but they would not hear it. How does America come out of this, where you have gun-toting men going into churches and holy places?
Well, I think that, that is, permit me to say, the dark side of America. How are these people from the National Rifle Association, how have they succeeded in suppressing this debate over the years? they have succeeded because of the kind of alliances they have with, the American Congress. So that brings up the issue of lobbying and the networks they have within Washington and within the political parties. So I think that going forward, it is time to begin to bring up issues of lobbying and how it's done in America, as a subject of debate. Because if
Okay.
you recall, former President Obama did a whole lot, but he couldn't pull off anything in the Congress because of the influence of the National Rifle Association. So how is it possible that they're able to do that? And, for America that champions itself as a country at the forefront of transparency, there are, in my view, questions to ask in this regard. How they have been able to hold some of these debates down, Congress after Congress, and how America could still stand on the moral high ground as a champion of transparency when issues like these are still put under the table. For me, that is an issue of concern. And for me, that is something that patriots, all over the world should get interested in, because it's not really about America alone. So many of us have relatives in the United States. So many people from all over the world find home in the United States. And if, the likes of the shooter they continue to be allowed to own guns, go to schools,
All right.
make
Uche, let me
America
come in
very
here.
unsafe is an issue for all of us.
Uche, let me come in here, really, because when it comes to patriotism in the U.S., the use of gun is not an issue. It's always a heated debate, because to some Americans, you have the right to hold guns, and it shouldn't be up for any form of discussion at all. But then, of course, gun dealers are very influential in that country, and somehow they even decide who gets to be president at the point when it becomes neck and neck between major candidates there. So looking at President Donald Trump now, who looks like he has a lot on his plate already, and so far is even silent on this latest development in Nashville, what should he be doing, though he's a Republican president?
Well, I think that President Trump is first an American before being a Republican president. And I think that he should not be silent when Americans are shot, and regardless of links or not with whosoever might have supported his campaigns. Of course, there are a whole lot of unanswered questions in that regard. But I think that President Trump should step up and be an American first before being a Republican, and condemn some of these reckless shooting. And we're not saying that people should not own guns. It is important to discuss and debate who is qualified to own a gun, and whether, if you are qualified, that qualification is permanent, or that qualification can be withdrawn, depending on circumstances. Those are issues of debate that cannot continuously be swept under the table.
Issue of a travel ban by the U.S. President Donald Trump, of course, includes Sudan in this list of 9 countries or so.
Will be renewed soon.
Yes. Now, Samson, the assailant or the attacker, is actually a legal U.S. resident who immigrated from Sudan in 1996 or so. Is there now reason for Donald Trump to be made to look like he's actually right to come up with this list of countries on the travel ban?
Well, I don't think that in some ways it is important to scrutinize those who come to the U.S. But, if you have noticed, the people who will constitute problems are those who are in the U.S. already. Look at some of these terrorism issues. You find out that, there are those who are in the country. Look at the United Kingdom. Look at France. So I think that, while he would, somewhat continue what he's doing in trying to scrutinize those who have entered the U.S., I think it's important to watch those who are within more, especially how those policies impact on them. Let us even assume, for the sake of debate, that this fellow who did this, was affected. Whenever such policies are made, it is important to review, the implications on those who are already in the states, especially understanding that, some of them, when they get frustrated, the easiest thing to do is to, take to mass murder here and there and make the society unsafe. For me, if those policies are policies that will end up making America much more unsafe, I think it is important to also debate them further and probably review them. Because ultimately, what, in my view, that Trump wanted to make us believe is that by those travel bans, he wants to make America safer. So indeed, if the implication, turns out to be negative, making America unsafe from within, then it is important to have a second look at it.
Uche Igwe, risk analyst and researcher, thank you very much for your analysis on the show at this time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.